Hello and welcome to College and Beyond Real Talk with Amour. If you have not already guessed, I'm your host, Amour Carthy. Today's episode is sponsored by Education Innovations, where we help guide families through education decisions from college and graduate admissions to life beyond. The purpose of this podcast is to help expose people to different colleges and different careers they may be interested in. On today's episode, we will be having Myles Nobles come on, and his episode is entitled College Coding and Career Moves, a Houston's Native's Journey. So, without further ado, let's bring on Myles.
Hi,
Hey, Myles, how are you?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing great. So, the people might not know who you are, but I'm going to tell them first before they find out. Yes, this is my nephew, and I'm super proud of him. But you probably may have seen him on the internet when they were, showing all the young Black professionals. I know I was surprised. I was like, that's my nephew. So, this is him. And this is Myles Nobles, and he's an engineer. So, why don't we start out by talking about what kind of engineer are you? Because I don't really understand. There's various types of engineers that exist. So please explain what kind of engineer you are so that the folks know.
Sure. Yeah. I'm a software development engineer. So basically, my job entitles like design decisions around software, implementing software, like fixing different things with software. And like specifically, it's all based on business needs. So we'll have like a business need, and then we'll try to implement software to address that need in the most efficient and cost efficient and scalable way possible. So that's the high level of what I do.
What's the low level then, if that's the high level?
Low level, like, day it's just it's a lot of, like, just reading through code, debugging and, like, managing cross-functional different departments. My company, has a lot of different teams, and we have product managers, we have software development engineers, and then we have, like, engineering managers, and we have, like, product design, so it's a lot of different facets that goes into the software lifecycle, the development lifecycle. So it's also a little bit of soft skills and managing that and trying to like get what you want to happen.
So when you say you have to have some soft skills, people always talk about coding, coding, coding. What are some of the soft skills that most people don't understand that they should have when they are working as a software development engineer?
Um, I think like just like with everything, and this is something like we learned a while back, is important to tell your story. And even in software, it might seem like it's just very technical, but in order to get like VPs, directors, or engineering managers aligned on what you want to do and how you want to implement it, you have to tell an effective story so they can buy in. And then I think a lot of times engineers might be good technically, but they're not able to get buy-in from leadership. And if you're not able to do that, then you will not go very far in your career. So I think the soft skills is learning how to tell that story, learning how to talk effectively, how to communicate. Yeah, and just being an all around like enjoyable person helps, I would say a lot.
An enjoyable person. So, what enjoyable things do you do that make you likable?
So this is like initially coming in, I was an entry level engineer. And part of that is definitely like a bit of grunt work, I would say, or work that no one wants to do. But one of the core things that I learned was asking your manager, like, what is their most difficult challenge and helping address that even as a young engineer. So it might be something that no one really wants to do, but it's something that needs to be done. So if
Mhm.
you can address those tasks and you build some goodwill with your manager and your leadership. So I think that's a key thing in building that trust. Because in order to become a good engineer, you have to take on larger and larger scope projects. But in order to get those projects, your manager is the one who ultimately determines the work you will work on. So you need to have a very good relationship with your manager in order to get those high complexity projects that will grow your talent as an engineer.
So, when you say the grunt work of being an engineer, what were some of those grunt work engineering tasks when you first came in? What are some of the things that you had to do for people who are trying to go into engineering?
Uh-huh. So we have like I can't go into too much detail exactly about the issues, but
Mhm.
we have
Mhm.
maybe like small or not small issues, but issues that don't necessarily affect the end customer, but they make developers' lives more difficult. So maybe in terms of testing or like releasing features, it might not have a direct impact on like the profits or the revenue, But in terms of the developer experience and making sure that the company can function more efficiently internally, a lot of that stuff is not prioritized because, we're just focused. We only have so many resources, and a lot of times we can only focus on the
Mhm.
things that are producing, like great top line revenue. So yeah, so there's like a lot of things like that that haven't been prioritized, but that would greatly have a immense benefit for the overall org and team. So I think a lot of those things, those are the things that maybe like are not as appealing to like an experienced engineer because they're working on big projects. But things like that can really help the organization.
So when you let's see, it's, coding, that's part of your title, coding. So what kind of coding did you have to learn to get into the engineering field?
Uh, well, you mean like from the beginning? Like what did I have to
Yeah.
learn?
Yeah. Is it languages that you had to
Yeah, I
learn?
mean, so languages are one thing for sure. I think initially I languages are one thing, but the biggest thing is more so just like logic. It's not really about exact language, it's more so how you can think about like implementing a solution and kind of the failure modes and the failure cases around it. And then the language is just your tool to actually get that outcome that you want. So there's a lot of different languages, and I wrote a few in college, like Java, Python, JavaScript, C, C++. So all of those languages are definitely important, but at the end of the day, you can implement the same solution in multiple languages. There are some trade-offs in terms of like efficiency and all that stuff, but the core of it is how can you take like this logic and implement it so it can be executed, on a device or on a machine. So most of my undergraduate was actually not about like coding in the sense. It was more so about thinking, solving problems, and it was like language agnostic. So it was more so just about we would write like pseudocode, which just means like if I was talking to you how I would do it, I would just like tell
Mhm.
you, write the steps. So
Mhm.
that was a lot of our undergrad were around like theory of just like learning how to think.
So tell us where you went to undergrad. What was your major? And, you had a minor.
Yeah.
And
So
yeah.
I went to Rice University, in Houston, Texas. My major was neuroscience. Interestingly enough, it was not computer science, it was neuroscience, and my minor was entrepreneurship.
And so why did you choose that major and minor? And did you always know that you wanted to be an engineer, or did you start to move towards it,
Yeah.
when you were exposed to different things?
Yeah. So basically what happened is I chose Rice initially because it had one of the best pre-med schools. So initially I wanted to be a doctor and specifically a neurosurgeon. But that's what led me to choosing Rice instead of choosing neuroscience. But in that neuroscience field, I was specifically interested in neurocomputation. So that's kind of the intersection of computer science and neuroscience. As what's really popular today, but like is like AI, but like augmented brains and things of that sort. That was my interest, and that's actually what I wrote about in my essay to get into Rice was that intersection, and that was what I was most interested in. And because I was going down the pre med route initially, I
Mhm.
thought neuroscience would be a better major over computer science, but it was interdisciplinary, and I was able to take computer science courses as well initially. And I didn't take as much as I would like because I had also had like a lot of neuroscience classes. But what kind of flipped the switch for me was like I said earlier, was that the entrepreneurship. I was very interested in entrepreneurship, and Rice had a growing entrepreneurship program at the time. Rice is very unique in the sense that when you come in, you get like a group of people that are like called your O week family, but basically it's like your orientation family, and there's other students there. In that,
Mhm.
I had a friend who was also very interested in entrepreneurship. Her name was Sonia Bargova, and we decided to start a company in college, and I didn't know how to code at the time when we started a company. So I was got into like no code solutions. I like was just like learning stuff and how to do stuff, how to build it so we can execute for the business. After that, kind of the no code solutions that I could find were not like holding up. So I decided to learn how to do it myself. And just like I
Mhm.
watched YouTube videos, I read some books, and then I was able to build a solution for our business. And then I really started like loving it. And that became like something we worked on for like until we graduated.
Mhm.
So then once I was building that business and learning how to code, I decided to also start focusing more on the computer science courses at Rice,
Mhm.
and I decided to take more, and yeah, take as much courses as I could. I think at that time I thought about if I could switch, neuroscience to computer science, and I could have. I think it would have caused me to maybe need an extra year. So
Mhm.
I was kind of at a disadvantage in the sense that there's computer science folks who had taken 4 years, and I was maybe a year and a half in,
Mhm.
and I was taking neuroscience classes. So, yeah, I decided to complete neuroscience and just learn as much on my own and take as much computer science classes as I could, but I didn't have enough time to finish the full degree for computer science.
So, but you were saying like you augmented that by teaching yourself things, and then you're not telling the people. So you had that company, and I feel like you not only did you have a company, I feel like you were doing some other company and entrepreneurial stuff. Like every time I looked up, I felt like you were doing something.
Yeah, there was 2 companies in college. One was
Mhm.
named Remora, one was named
Mhm.
Bliss that I
Mhm.
participated in. Remora was a food delivery app, but it turned it on its head, where instead of someone requesting, that they want a food item, it would use people's, like, natural movement. So in a college community, we will have, like, people just doing things, going to Target, going to Walmart, or, wherever, going to Cane's.
Mhm.
So instead of making people like request things and they go and get it, people would post or would notify the broader community that, hey, I'm at Walmart. And the Rice community could say that they needed something, and then both
Mhm.
people would get paid. So the idea was to make it easier to use the community's natural movements to provide value to the broader campus. So that was the first business that I worked on all throughout from sophomore year or maybe freshman year to senior year. And then in
Mhm.
the senior year, I was involved with a dating app for a little bit of time. So then the dating app was named Bliss, and I came on as an engineer there, as their first engineer there. And
Mm.
that, yeah, that went well. So I, yeah, built the whole like technical stack there, the app, the back end, and that was a really good experience. Dating apps are really, really difficult though, because not that the tech side is difficult, but in order to provide value is a two-sided
Mhm.
marketplace. You need both sides, like the people you need. Yeah, you just need a lot of women and a lot of men. And in order to get amass like a critical amount, it just takes a lot of like advertisement and a lot of money to get there. And like the
Mhm.
biggest players in there is like Match.com, which like
Mhm.
owns like Hinge, Tinder, all these things. So it's a very competitive market, but I learned a lot.
I didn't know that Match owned all of those
They're
different
like a monopoly
websites.
now. Yeah.
But those are all separate, huh? You taught me something, but uh, well, that I like how you got started, or you know, you were able to change your focus and you weren't afraid to go into a different field, but you kept teaching yourself and do all this, and did all that stuff. I don't know if you know about your aunt, but back in the day before the first .com bubble, I taught myself how to code with a book.
Oh,
And yeah, I don't think you
how
know
did
that.
you learn in the book?
So it was HTML, and I had created the first website for Carl Kanai. If you look up that urban wear, done that. And I had my first business was Cognoscenti Web Designs, and I would go up and down to little small businesses in little Ethiopia. And I would say, hey, there's this thing where they're putting their stores online, and I think it would be something that would be good for you. And they're like, what? We have a store. And I'm like, no, you really should do this. And so I'd go around and try to make people's websites. So that
Wait,
was back in early 2000s. And then at one point, I had gone up to, yeah, it was still early 2000s. I was up in the Bay Area. And so a lot of the internet companies, when they first started, they weren't connected to the back end. The front end wasn't connected to the back end. So like people would pay, but the stuff wasn't connected. So I would do the stuff in the back end to make sure it was connected. So it's just interesting to see how all of the technology is constantly changing. And you said that I loved how you talked about the soft skills and that you also have to work with all these different groups. So are all of your different groups in America, or do you also work with international groups? Because when I was in technology, I worked with international engineers all over the place. Ukraine, where else was the other? Ukraine was the biggest one, and even in Israel. So, do you have other teams where you work with that are outside of the U.S. And even how they interact? You have to understand that too.
Yeah, we have teams globally that we worked with, and even in our, like, specific org, it's broken up where we have teams in, San Francisco,
Mhm.
Seattle, Europe,
Mhm.
Italy,
Mhm. Mhm.
Germany. So, it is a challenge in a sense because of that time zone difference as well.
Mhm.
Uh And then also, yeah, it's just like sometimes it's a challenge, but yeah, working within even within, like America and the US is that even we have teams in Virginia, teams in New York,
Mhm.
so they start much earlier. And so, like, as soon as we get on the West Coast, they'll usually be there might be a problem already that we need to resolve that they've maybe identified or they need help with. So yeah, it's
So
it's a
do you all do you use videos sometimes to help you in your communication? Like if they're like ahead or behind and, try to say, "Hey, this is what I'm seeing." So when they wake up, like they have a video of it instead of like just I used to hate when people would do Slack and they try to do all these back and forth. I'm like, no, just I need to see a video. I need to see of the actual problem of what you're talking about. Like I
Yes, we
need to
do
see
that.
it.
We do that, and we have like a centralized like documentation mechanism, and then we will like add videos, screen record, we'll add pictures, like anything that could be helpful. And then yeah, we definitely do communicate a lot like asynchronously with Slack as well. So it's
Yeah.
like a combination of those things.
That's good. So we have that, and then you said you went to Rice, and you said you chose that because at one point you were trying to be a doctor. So, with engineering, too, what advice would you give to like high school students who are thinking of going into the engineering field? Would you have them do certain classes or participate in certain activities? What would you suggest to them?
Yeah. Um, I think I think engineering field is definitely changing. It's a big inflection point right now in the industry, and, like, I see it every day, especially with artificial intelligence. So, how you work will be different, and the tools that you use to be will be different. I think, like, one thing with engineers, especially, like, is that we are so technical, but initially why I got into engineering was to drive like a business outcome and that I had like a startup and I wanted it to be successful. So I think for me, I feel like that is kind of where it's going, where it's about how can you drive a business outcome. And yes, you need the engineering skills and you need to have that theory behind it. And these tools are making it easier to deliver these business outcomes. So I would recommend I feel like entrepreneurship and building
Mhm.
things are crucial. So I would recommend people to just build things that they find interesting. A lot of times, like how I learned is even like something that I thought was cool, whether it's like a cool app or cool website, I would just build it myself. And that's even
Mhm.
easier today with the technology that we have. And then I would just see like the challenge that I faced. And it was just things that I was personally interested in. So I would just recommend just to build and take advantage of the new tools that we have. Use it for learning because I use it for learning, but you still need to be very I don't know, you still need to be very critical of it. So I think it's for me, it's been a big advantage in like my speed and my ability to learn, but you need to learn the correct way. I think sometimes that like, these AI tools will make it so that learning becomes more passive and that you'll just ask it questions and get the response back, but you're not actually actively learning. So I would
Mhm.
recommend to push back on it to develop some type of like mechanism so that you can take full advantage of it because I think it's no better time than today to gain access to this knowledge to build. There's so many things that are changing in this world. Yeah, just to build, to keep on learning, and to make sure you're doing it with rigor, I would say is key.
So are you essentially saying that people need to understand the foundation of things? Yes, AI
Yes.
tools are great because they have problems. I'm not gonna lie. I use AI tools like every day, but some of the answers are not correct. But because I have a foundational understanding, I'm like, this is not correct. So
Yeah.
I got to correct it, but I have gone through the logic of doing stuff or understand what is the problem I'm trying to resolve. So I'm like, this isn't correct. okay, I know where to get to the source of the statistics or the facts that I need. But this, like, who are I'm in my mind, I'm starting to always yell at myself. Who are the engineers who are working on it? They need more different kind of engineers because whoever is doing the computational or the LLM for it is not feeding it the right information because it's crazy what they're
Yeah.
spitting out.
Yeah, exactly. Like LLMs and like when you go into the theory, it's not deterministic by nature. So it's a
Mhm,
probability machine. And with probability, it's not 100%. It will never be 100% correct, at least in
mhm,
its current form. So it's definitely important to understand the foundations of it, even if you're like but a good thing about it is that you can use it to dig deeper into those foundations. So just because you're asking a high level question, it might give you an answer, but I would recommend to dig deeper into what that actually means, how that actually started. A lot of times I'll go back into like I'll be like learning like a language and then I'll get into how like computers were even made in the first place, what caused this. Like I want to understand the flow from beginning to end of why these decisions were made. And then
mhm.
I think that gives you like, and I also read a lot of papers. So like I was like learning about like databases and like SQL and like
SQL,
NoSQL database.
mhm,
And I kind of
mhm,
went back all the way into like when Google was first getting made and the founders, what problems they faced and each
mhm,
decision that actually caused them to build these databases that way. And it was
mm,
a great learning experience. And it makes so many things click because you see so many patterns and
mhm,
in every software and just in like modern electronics, modern devices, you see so many patterns. So I would just recommend, yeah, like digging deep, finding those patterns, and then keep on reading and reading the original papers that were like for me is a lot of technical papers, but they were released
mhm,
in like 1990s, 1980s, or whatever the case may be, and getting
mhm,
it from the source. And then I'll
mhm.
use that source and I'll ask maybe a LM or AI to help me if I don't understand this part, but definitely going back to the sources, I think really gives you a deeper understanding.
So it sounds like you're also part historian, you know? I love history.
I do like it because I feel like understanding it gives you a greater understanding of like the current picture, and I
Mhm,
think it just make even future decisions like more clearer because you can understand on why certain things. And sometimes like we have trends, even in like software, we have trends, and
mhm,
it seem like something is just like, oh, you should do this, but then when you look back on it and you understand the history behind it, you see, okay, maybe that's actually not the right decision. Even though it's the trend today, because I
right.
understand how this even developed, I can say that it's not the right decision for our use case.
Ooh, and I like how you can be like, "Well, I read this paper and here's the original." I think it's more effective if you do that. So, if you come back to visit the Atlanta metro area, there's this, computer museum that's down the street in Roswell called the MIMS Computer, Museum, and it has all the computers from the beginning till now, and you have to come see that. I think you would love that. You
I'll
would go
definitely be,
crazy.
yeah.
Yeah, it's right down the street from the house, so you definitely gotta check that out. So, you are originally from Houston and you live in San Francisco,
Yeah.
and that was your you said it was your first job out of college. What was that transition from growing up in the South to the Bay Area? What was that like for you?
Yeah, it was very different. I would say that coming to Houston or being in Houston originally, it is like a really diverse city and there's like people from all walks of life. And though at Rice is a I found my community at Rice and they do a lot, especially like they have a lot of like Black and African American like clubs and organizations. So I felt really at home and I made like some lifelong friends there. The biggest
Mhm,
transition was just losing those connections and those friends here and trying to rebuild. And part of that, like rebuilding and that process was actually, you mentioned that TikTok that went viral, but that's an event for Black professionals. So that organization or that club that was just became around like recently, like maybe a 6, 7 months back. So that's been like
wow.
really nice. But before that, yeah, I think it was just like struggling with finding that community here and then like in a new place, finding that community. And then also you're moving from just to a new place in general and trying to start a job. So I think that was a big struggle. But the positive of San Francisco is that it's beautiful and I've been getting into nature more. So yeah, that's been fun.
So what kind of nature have you been getting in?
So there's a lot of like national parks here. So we've been like visiting them, and I'm actually going to like Yosemite in April with a friend. So it's a lot of like visiting national parks and hikes. Golden Gate
Mm,
Park is similar
yes.
to like, a lot of people might know Central Park. I personally think, like, Golden Gate Park is better, and it's actually even bigger than Central
Yes.
Park, fun fact. So, yeah, I love just taking walks in the park and just really detaching, from devices. I think this year I've made a like, I've been trying to detach definitely from, like, social media and devices and just try to be more present. So I think going on walks and even going on walks with, like, friends and my partner has been, like, really nice.
Mhm. So what did you think of Muir Woods? He is my nephew, and, me and his mother grew up in Oakland and Vallejo, and we would go to Muir Woods and all of that stuff. So did you go to Muir Woods?
Yes.
What did you think
I've
of
been
that place?
I love Muir Woods. I go to Muir Woods. Anytime we bring someone here, we'll definitely, go to Muir Woods. I think it's, like, marvelous just to look up at the trees and see how tall and just, like, how breathtaking they are, and it's, like, a different air when you get into Muir Woods. The air that you
Mhm.
breathe feels different, and it gives you, like, a grounded sense, so, yeah, I love Muir Woods. I've been maybe, like, 5 times. Every time someone new comes visit, we that's one of the stops we make.
So, and then the other thing that I wanted to ask you is food. How is the food different, from Houston and the San Francisco Bay Area? Is it different, better, or worse than Houston?
I mean, I'm biased towards Houston food. I would say that I haven't a lot of the food places that I've been told to try are in Oakland. So I've only been to a few of those. I haven't explored Oakland enough like I should in terms of the food. So a lot of the
Mhm,
food places I tried are in San Francisco.
mhm.
They have really good food for sure. One thing is, like, the South has, like, soul food and, like, more, like, Cajun food and those type of things. I'm very hard pressed to find that here. There's one place that I'm found in San Francisco that has that. So, yeah, I would say that's a big difference. There's a lot of Asian cuisine, a lot of Italian. So I think the food is really good. I think Houston food has every single thing. I think San Francisco has a lot of things, but it's definitely missing, like, that Southern cuisine, I would say.
So you probably miss your daddy's barbecue, that's what that is.
Oh, yeah, there's also for some reason, there's not much barbecue places here. There's a few, maybe, like, 2 or 3. Like, in San Francisco that's close by, there's maybe, like, 2 or 3 that I've been to that are decent, but there's not a lot.
Yeah, you gotta come back home down to the South to, eat some good barbecue. So, thank you so much for speaking with us. How can people follow you, and what is, something that you wanna tell the world before you get off or end our episode? What do you wanna say?
Well, for in terms of the first question, people following me, they can find me on LinkedIn. It's my name, Myles Nobles. I should pop up. And something to tell the world. Let me see. Yeah, I would just say I mean, the biggest thing for me is just to keep on learning and keep on being passionate about learning. I think the biggest thing, no matter what field you are going into, is the ability to learn and to figure out like what makes you tick in terms of like what works for you and what you're interested in. So I feel like whether you're trying to become a doctor, engineer, teacher, lawyer, whatever the case may be, just staying curious. I think that'll be the biggest driver of like the world. And I think that's what brings innovation is just staying curious about everything, asking questions.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, and we'll see you on the next episode. Bye-bye.
All right.